Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Amy. So welcome to one of GISMO's most popular program, which is AppFair, Application Fair from across the different city agencies. Welcome, my name is Jen Wen. I am the current GISMO president, filling in some very big shoes left out by Al Leitner, who's also in the audience today and also a panelist. With that said, today our program is in the share screen to your right. I'm going to try to save as much time as we can, but I just want to welcome everyone. Hope everyone will consider, if you're not a member, become a GISMO member. Amy will put in a link. You will note that Amy is going to put the housekeeping items in the chat, and if you have questions along the way, please put in the chat. Everything is a chat. Thank you. High flex situation we're in. But I just want to highlight a couple of things that GISMO is doing in 2022 and beyond. We are, if you have had a chance to read the newsletter from me and the board lately, we're looking at a TLC 2022. T, of course, is not surprisingly focused. Our program will focus on a series of program on technology. And we just had one on tips and tricks from Doug and Dara, our board members, our board of directors. And the L is really for leadership. We're laying down the road for our new GIS colleagues in the years to come, as I was one myself 20 years ago, holy smoke. We started a mentorship program and also a job fair session of last month. And the C, this is the C. This is the communication between different, connection and communication between different agencies of all level. And today we start with our wonderful city agencies. And can we go back to the quick agenda? Amy, thank you. So I'm gonna, without further ado, I was wondering if everyone's open. I guess you can't really quite see. At the end, I do ask everyone on the screen, in the virtual world, turn on the camera and give our friends and presenter a live clap and thank you at the end. With that, we will start with Tom Swanson and Christopher Radu for OTI, formerly known as Do It, and on the GIS world. And let's just say a little bit as you set up, Chris and Tom Swanson is a new executive director of the citywide GIS for New York City at the Office of Technology and Innovation, now OTI. In this role, Tom is responsible for modernizing the current OTI GIS platforms to make GIS data and services more accessible across city agency and to the public. Yay. Tom has pursued a passion of GIS and data-driven problem solving throughout his career. He has a master's degree in GIS from the University of Minnesota. Fun fact, I didn't know this. Building things with concrete is his favorite pastime. Planters, countertops. Oh, I know who to go to now. And of course, Chris. Chris is Director of GIS at Office of Technology Innovations, formerly as known as Do It. Thank you. He has worked in New York City GIS universe since 2004, first with the Department of City Planning and now with OTI. Fun fact, Chris is connected. His wife is a beekeeper at the Prospect Park Zoo. I think, can we do maybe a selection of GIS honey stash? Anyway, on that note, Chris and Tom.
I'm just going to start, Chris. I'll just welcome everyone and thank you and hand it off to you a second. And thank you, Jen and the whole GISMO team for putting this on. We really appreciate this. This is important and needed. And I'm looking forward to the whole presentation that we have, and thank everyone for joining here today. And with that, I hand it off to you, Chris.
All right, thanks. All right, so yes, it's great to have an opportunity to finally present to GISMO. I feel like we've been silent for a lot of years, so I'll get right into it. So let's begin. So yes, we're now called OTI, Office of Technology and Innovation, and what are we going to start doing? This is kind of what we determined as our role for the city, is to design workflows to produce authoritative, API accessible geodata content that is easily findable from a robust public environment, which in our case is going to be ArcGIS Online. And the other things that we have been doing all along, we're going to continue to do is to continue to acquire regular aerial imagery and terrestrial imagery too. We contract with a vendor for terrestrial imagery as well. And then things like planimetric data updates and as needed other types of data sources that we have to contract for. And then the other role, support developer use of geodata. So what do we mean by design data workflows? In order to use our platform, ArcGIS Online, to do all these things, we are going to design a workflows to ingest data, either from agencies, maybe even from public entities, I don't know, or whatever. We're going to have ETLs that will generally move this. This is kind of a large picture idea. Move it to an internal production database, and then we'll publish it from there to ArcGIS Online, and allow it to be consumed by the public and city agencies as well. So kind of the idea of this is to have some kind of control. So we have a consistent format that we're using to move data from its really source, whoever generates the data, who creates it, and have some governance in place to like make sure everything's good, and then we'll move it to a publicly accessible location, which is ArcGIS Online. So what kind of data are we talking about here? So we're talking about like vector GIS data. So here's like your typical just generic picture of vector data. Like right now we provide data to open data. We manage a lot of different types of data, but right now we're providing to open data things like building footprints, address points, street center lines, and like maybe points of interest. That's part of a larger set of data that we maintain here at Do It with city planning called Citywide Street Centerline database, which we're going to expand this available data by adding like 40 more data layers, things like boundaries, subway lines, all kinds of other stuff like all census districts and tracts. All this stuff's going to be available in one location from ArcGIS Online as services and also download formats. This is aerial imagery, so orthophotos. We're going to continue we've been maintaining orthophotos since I think back to like 1999, and we have a few earlier years, but we're going to continue to do this on a yearly basis. This is an example of oblique imagery that we contract for, and so this will be available to developers, city agency developers, maybe public developers. I'm not quite so sure about that yet, depends. But so this is an oblique imagery that we have from 4 directions, north, south, east, and west perspectives of things. So there's Botanic Garden. I should have done the zoo where my wife is the beekeeper, but that's it, okay. And then also another data source that we have available is, I was talking about terrestrial imagery. So we contract with Cyclomedia for street level imagery. And so this is really detailed street level imagery that is backed with LiDAR behind it. So you can make accurate measurements on it, measure building heights and things like that. And this is also something we have a historical archive of, and also something that developers can make use of API access to. I think Parks, Department of Parks actually uses Cyclomedia in some of their applications. So you can go to a location and look at, I think they might use it for a tree application or something like that. So you can see trees and things like that and see the street level view of that. And then LiDAR is another one. So city is contracted for LiDAR 2 times. There's 2 LiDAR data sets that we have at Do It, is 2010 and 2017. We have 2014, but that's like USGS, which is available. But again, this stuff is going to also be made available through ArcGIS Online and available through like an interface to be able to download it. And then basemap. This is an example of our vector basemap, which I'm going to demonstrate very soon. So Esri has helped us put together this vector basemap. This will be available internally in the city and also for public use with API. So yes, APIs for everyone. So why do we want to do this? These are stable, reliable, up-to-date, authoritative data sources that we're going to be hosting on ArcGIS Online. No more weekly shapefile downloads. It has driven me crazy to be posting weekly shapefiles on open data. Don't have to do that anymore. But if you want them, you can still get them. And I'll show you that. No more sneakernet data transfer operations, which is like something I've been doing since I started working for the city in 2004, and I'm happy to see that going away. And so we're going to have a site, NYC Maps is what it's called, and it's going to be authoritative geodata site, highly available, searchable, maintained by us. It's going to have documentation, support resources, and best practice recommendations. So all of that stuff we're going to have. And we're working on this right now, which is what we're working on right now. So what are we doing? Yes, we're building this NYC map site. It's not open for use yet. We may do like a sort of soft release to city agencies first to get feedback, but then ultimately it will be publicly available. So we're setting up these data workflows to support this thing that I described earlier. And then we're also drafting like data governance and metadata standards, which I think Cindy will be talking about later in a later talk. And also we have a lot of legacy stuff that we're transitioning off of and moving applications like Hurricane Finder and cooling centers. We're going to be moving those to the new platform to be supported by the new platform. So now let's move to a demo. Let's see, let's go to here. And I want to demo base map first. So yes, here's the base map that that will be available that Esri has helped us put together. You can see we have a lot of standard stuff, street directions. Yes, so here's the base map, and see has some scale stuff, and this is a vector tile base map. So there's a base map. And then this is something I wanted to spend a little more time with. This is really nice. So this is sort of a replacement for NY City Map, which is an application that we had before that has lots of different, you know, a variety of data layers, sort of like an all kinds of stuff data layer thing. But really what's kind of nice about this one is it really helps you find data. And I'm going to go to a boundary layer because not everything is actually, I haven't set everything up yet to be available yet. So let's say we turn on neighborhood boundaries and we pick a neighborhood. This is the key thing here is the view data and download, which is so nice. And so then it takes you here to this where you see the data set. And then you can go to a place where you can hit download, and not only here's the shapefile if you want that shapefile, but you can get file geodatabase, GeoJSON, Excel, variety of formats. And then there's also links for the APIs here as well for that. So that's something that we're really excited about. Like, I'm really excited about this. This is great. And then talking about like applications, this is an AppFair, of course. So let's take a look at, we also have, this is the food help application. Right now, this is an application, I believe it started with sanitation, and then now it's currently hosted by emergency management. But Do It is going to, Do It, I keep saying Do It, I shouldn't say that, oops. OTI is going to be releasing a replacement for that. And so we can try to do a little demo of that. Let's do like, I don't know, let's do current location. This has been taking me to some place. Let's see what it's going to give me. Yeah, this is not really in the city. Let's try to do like to Metro Tech. Here we go, to Metro Tech. And so this application is kind of designed for mobile generally. So it looks, I think it looks fine to me on like in a browser, but like you can do a selection for a location. You can then look at a card of the location. You can get hours of operation. Let me pick a different one that has better hours of operation. So you can see that that actually happens. So you can get some information, hours of operation. And then if you need directions to it, you can get directions to it. So yes, so that is an example of our application. All right, and so I think that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris and Tom.
All right, I'll stop my screen share and someone can go next.
Oh, sorry. Who is next? I believe NYPD. Are you up and ready? Let me give you the shine you deserve. We have Doug Williamson. Dr. Doug Williamson is Executive Director of Analysis and Mapping at the New York City Police Department, NYPD. He is responsible for the formulation and application of mapping statistics and other analytic methods to develop and interpret information that assists management with decision decision-making, policy formulation, other managerial functions. He is also an adjunct associate professor in the Geography and Environmental Science Department at Hunter College, and he's also an instructor at Columbia University. And I wonder what he's covering in university institutions. And fun fact, Doug was Frank Bebo's GIS instructor at Hunter College. Frank, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. And then, yes, okay. And of course, we are also delighted to have Frank making the presentation. And Frank is, sorry, just give me one second. Frank is a city research scientist at NYPD. He works for the same analysis and mapping section with the Office of Management Analysis and Planning. Frank has been with the department since 2016 and a 2020 graduate of Hunter College's Geoinformatics program. Yay, 2020. Frank is originally from upstate New York, where he enjoys spending time doing anything outdoors. With that, NYPD.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate the introduction. Thanks to everybody for joining. I just wanted to give a brief introduction to some of the work we've done, and Frank's going to go into detail on. Just a little, backstory. Our story is sort of a microcosm of what Tom and Chris were describing over at the citywide level. For years we had disparate systems, and we had people using different tools. We had, no governance on our data. There were shape files all over the place. We had different versions of software, different, not even the same type of software. So we had this, basically the Wild West, and we needed to get some organization around that. And that's what we undertook a couple of years ago. So we started implementing some standards. We started implementing governance. We got everybody on the same sheet of music as far as software goes. We tried to create this federated model where there would be one source of truth, right? There would be a system of record and everybody would use that. So one key aspect of that, or one key piece of that, is this enterprise GIS portal that Frank's going to talk about. And that really is, sort of the hub of this whole federated model. That's sort of the linchpin in the whole thing. And it really made a big difference. That's where we have authoritative data that people can use across the organization. It doesn't matter what bureau. We sort of vet it and stamp it, and then everybody gets access to it. It was a long road, to be quite honest with you. I'm sure some of you are going through similar experiences. I'm sure the Do It folks or OTI folks could commiserate with that. But in the end, it was worth it. And it is worth it, right? It's much better for the organization. It's much better for, some of the things that Jim described in my bio, right? Policy, decision-making, all of this, hinges on good data. And so we're real, we still have a ways to go. We still have a lot we want to do. But we've come a long way, and we're quite proud of what we've done so far. So I'm going to hand it over to Frank and let him show you some of the stuff.
Sure. So again, thank you for the introduction. And as Doug mentioned, I'm going to kind of discuss the overall GIS enterprise system we have here and touch on some major points. Then hopefully at the end I could kind of give an overview on a couple of apps and dashboards that we've developed with help from this enterprise system. So luckily, I've been working for the department since the inception of this, since the beginning. So I kind of have a good perspective from where we started and where we are now, and all the steps that we've taken to get to this point. And I'll go into some more detail about the actual deployment. But just a quick overview, like I mentioned, I'm going to touch base on the actual rollout of this department-wide system and how we worked pretty closely shoulder to shoulder with Esri and other vendors to get it up and running. And then I'm going to focus on, we've got a custom internal portal that we put up for members of the service to use. Also, I'm going to touch base on some specific enhancements and enrichments that the enterprise allowed us to deploy department-wide. And then again, like I said, a couple of public safety tools that we've put together with this enterprise system. So in terms of deployment, like I mentioned, we worked shoulder to shoulder with Esri from the beginning to stand this up. And obviously, it's a fairly large department. There's multiple vendors and internal stakeholders that, we kind of had to work with them in mind to meet the needs of everyone in terms of the architecture and the development, who needs what software, compatibility, training, and what have you. And then another part of it, the deployment process was, we weren't just focused on getting rid of the old and bringing in this new system. We wanted to enhance and upgrade previous GIS and spatial technologies that have been in the department for a while. So that was a big part of the deployment process as well. And again, with all this, it's meant to break down the silos, get everyone on the same page, get all those parts working together in the same direction towards the same goal. So as I mentioned before, that was just briefly the deployment process and our goals. But a big positive, a big part of this was standing up an internal portal. So we have here at the department, it's a NYPD geospatial portal. It's web browser based, but it's not public facing, so it's just for the analysts, officers, bosses, executives. It's accessible to all of them, just through the URL and their credentials. So we wanted to give GIS capabilities, get GIS capabilities in the hands of anyone who needs it, wants it, or is interested in learning in the department, and just kind of get the ball rolling on informing everyone we work with about what you can do and where you can do it. So we've got kind of overviews, lessons, tutorials, all kinds of stuff on the portal, and it's all vetted and curated by the GIS team here. So all the data is accurate and can be consumed without the user having to worry about that. And it's kind of meant to be a one-stop shop for any GIS user. And here's the splash page for our portal. And everyone who's interested, they just get directed here, and it's got all the data needed. It's got all the training you would need, and just an overall rundown of what GIS is and how to do some analytics and GIS work in the portal. Like I mentioned, it's the one-stop shop. Here's the training, specific training. Not everyone comes from a GIS background in the department, so we've got to bring them up to speed there. And then we've got a bunch of functioning arms and apparatus here at PD. So we've got sites that could be curated to their specific needs. So I know it's just kind of running through that screen share right there, but that's like I said, that one-stop shop we put together. And the other part of this was upgrading previous technologies that we had, and we were able to do that throughout this enterprise system. Where one of the big milestones I think we reached was to kind of bring our data up to speed in terms of giving members of the service access to real-time data feeds instead of static tabular data or just CSVs and Excel data. We were able to kind of connect directly. We were able to connect directly to our databases and have live feed mapping data available up in the portal for them to consume. We also used Esri integration to improve and upgrade previous mapping applications. The domain awareness system, which has been in the department for a while, has been improved using these technologies as well. And then a big part of it was increasing the accuracy and precision of our data. So any crime-related data that may be a bad address, didn't geocode or locate, we were able to kind of implement next-gen enrichment and improve the locators and geocoding at the source for our data instead of cleaning it at the end. And everything kind of fix the issues at the source, and we're able to do that with this enterprise system. So that was a big positive. And a kind of operational side to it that we're able to now kind of spread throughout the entire department is you can whip up some custom applications, dashboards or web maps to help on the streets or operationally with investigations or any type of police work or public safety related work. Here we've got, for example, on the left is a application where the bureau, the unit in charge of parade details throughout the city, can edit data on the fly, edit routes and posts for officers assigned to that detail, give them the capability to edit stuff on the fly. The middle example is just kind of a site put together for crime analysts in the department where they could all have the same URL and have access to the same tools. We also have some technology, some Q&A technology that makes Q&A easier and possible in terms of cameras. On the right side is it's a case study where we're using some Esri technology to increase the accuracy of the view vantage points of our cameras. So you kind of get a different scope, a couple different scopes of how we're using these operationally. And with that too, like I mentioned, some custom applications. We put together some analysis applications or investigation applications and dashboards that can be shared throughout the department, not only created in-house by our team and shared out to specific units that need it, but we also give those specific units the tools and resources they need to create custom applications that could help them. So this is kind of a proximity analysis application with some live feed camera data for the streets and crime activity. And then here's an example of a dashboard we put together that's used in investigations, specifically tracking. It's a gun tracking dashboard, which is again used by those responsible for apprehending and tracking down those guns. So and I kind of had to rush through the end there, but that's all I have. And again, if there's any questions about those applications or anything, we'd be happy to answer them at the end. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank and Doug. And now we are going right along to, golly, my house. So I failed to mention that I am at NYC EDC Economic Development Corporation. I guess I can proudly say the founding director for MGIS at EDC. It is with great pleasure I get to introduce Reza Tehranfar. Sorry, Reza, and he and my colleague and indispensable part of the team. Reza is the senior technical lead at NYCDC, helping the MGIS team administer organization's GIS infrastructure. He's also a Hunter College alum like myself and many others on this call for both undergrad and undergrad education. And he's always looking to escape NYC for the outdoors when not making maps. Frank, you got a new buddy in GISMO. Anyway, Reza, all you.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So hi, everybody. My name is Reza Tehranfar, and I'm the senior technical lead in the MGIS team at New York City Economic Development Corporation. Today, I'm here to present to you our GIS environment. Here's an overview of my presentation. I'm going to be going over who we are, both EDC and MGIS, and I'm going to talk about how EDC's unique role in governance and how MGIS had to create a lean and elastic GIS environment that can respond well to the ever-changing goals and needs. So as far as EDC, who we are, we're not a mayoral agency or office. We're a nonprofit organization whose sole client is the city of New York. Our president is appointed by the mayor. Some form of EDC has existed over 50 years. Our mission statement is building strong neighborhoods and creating good jobs. I'm not going to go over too much what that means, but I'm just going to give you some example of projects that we do that could help you see what we do. We operate Brooklyn Army Terminal, including managing its property tenants and making the necessary improvement. We started a New York City ferry and work closely with the operator on the day-to-day basis. We lead the LifeSci program, which is a $1 billion investment in bringing science, research, and development. Staple Waterfront is a good example of our land use and capital planning efforts. Also, as far as capital, I will look towards Rockaway Boulevard, Coney Island, and Highline as some of the other capital programs. And also Fresh, which is trying to through tax incentive, trying to encourage supermarket and high needs area. Why am I just mentioning EDC when what we do? It's because just looking at it from a GIS perspective, we need to have our hands on a large swath of data set from real estate, business, labor statistics, planning, environmental, transportation, and others to support this initiative. And while we could take on new roles, new projects all the time, so one thing we have to do is we have to be lean, and that's a major focus of this presentation. So, and who we are MGIS. We make maps, but we also have this whole other multimedia side to us that's a little outside of this scope, so we're not going to get into it, but we're small. Including Jen, we are a staff of four full-time person, and a large portion of our day-to-day is to respond to mapping and spatial requests. We receive mostly from EDC, within EDC. Sometimes we do get just like others on the call, the city hall request and other city agency requests. And as I will explain, the end product has shifted in the last few years from where our deliverables tended to be a PDF map, maybe a spreadsheet, to basically almost always being a web map. This has been primarily due to how we deployed our GIS infrastructure. So just overall high-level GIS at NYC-EDC. The one big takeaway is that we're not like OTI or city planning or other agencies where we're have to create and maintain a large data set. We do maintain some specialized small data sets, but nothing where we have to create any kind of invest in any heavy infrastructure or develop pipelines for. On the other hand, we consume a lot of data set. They can range from anything you find from in open data to proprietary data or to data that we maintain and keep. And the people who make the maps, what I'm calling here the creators, it's mostly us in MGIS, the 4 people. Sometimes we do have an intern. And we do have some frequent to infrequent people who use desktop application within EDC. We do, there are vendors and consultants who work on projects, and as part of their deliverable, they do provide some mapping data or applications. And who are the viewers? Basically everybody else at EDC. And what they do and who they are can vary a lot. Their expectations can vary. Some want to have something very complex where they do most of the analysis, so we're pushing all the data to them. And others just want something really simple, point and click, and timeline could vary. They could want it in 20 minutes or a week, and you may have, you may need it for a meeting, for maybe 2-day cycle, to they just want to have something evergreen, have it continually updated, so we get the full scope. So something that we created, this is our enterprise, our GIS enterprise. We deployed this in January 2020, and the portal being one of its key components. We named it GeoEDC. And I'm not going to go too specific of the product, but I would say it has the feel of ArcGIS Online, except that you're hosting it on your servers and your organization is maintaining it. In exchange for that maintenance, you don't need to spend Esri credits or for geoprocessing and storage. So what it's meant for the admin, it means, I think one of the key is that it has one central database where we could publish our data. So a desktop user is accessing the same data as a viewer is looking at the application. So let's say that desktop user makes a change to an application, the end user will have the change in the data sets once that person's press save. No need to push data from one server to another or republish things. So it's like very seamless. It's just one place and everybody goes to that for the information. So data can be sent via hyperlink, unlimited viewer license. Anyone in the organization who has an EDC email gets a GeoEDC user account. We're leveraging our organization's Active Directory, so we don't have to maintain any kind of user base list, worry about who's not in, who's out. It's an internal server, so we can sync it with our ArcGIS Online for if you need to share something externally. Okay. So for the creators, something that's changed with the portal is now that when we get a request, we assume the end product is a web map. Since there's very little coding involved, if any, you can spin out full mapping applications really fast. Oftentimes the data is published or hosted, so that person making that application doesn't even have to go to use the desktop application. Desktop applications generally relegated for when you need to do geoprocessing and then publish that data or some other data that's not already published. And also the biggest benefit is that the creator no longer has to pack all this information into a static paper-sized map. You could add filters, pop-ups, and other tools so that the user can explore the data more. I think that's a really big benefit. It actually makes things quicker for us. One common thing is that people assume a PDF map is going to be easier to make. It's actually not. Making a web map's just so much quicker. And for the viewer, one, they have a single sign-on experience, and they do have that enhanced interaction that I just mentioned. They have a better ability to collaborate with us because they see a more intimate view of the data. You know, they're not seeing something that's going from light red to dark red. They're actually getting to see they could filter the data, do a radius search, have a click on a feature and have like 100 different values pop up to see what that entails. So yeah, and if they're on an EDC device, as I mentioned, it's single sign-on, and their product is a URL now, so that the distribution's a little easier. They don't have to forward files or keep a folder in their computer cloud to have the maps. And to bring it all together, same as NYPD, we started an internal site for staff to search maps and to kind of teach people how data is organized, like what's a map, what's a data, we have it organized. We have a whole data set where we curate that we think that's relevant to our organization's initiatives. We categorize them so that we're not being gatekeepers, but we're also holding hands and letting them what's the authoritative, what's the best uses, what's the best data source there. We also use this site to have our different maps, whether they're evergreen maps or maps we made throughout our time. It helps us showcase the work we've done, and also could maybe reuse a map that we had, like we did 2 years ago that served its purpose, but now could have a second life as somebody for another project manager. I think that's another key thing. And also for the viewer, they could just come to this site. They don't have to bookmark anything. They know their map or plural maps live in this space, and they could just come here and visit it and see what other departments are working on within EDC. So as far as next steps, we're planning to do some educational and tutorial outreach, how users can leverage GeoEDC, how they could better understand our application, make better requests, provide us with some of their data that they're maintaining. We could make it spatial. We would love to leverage Portal to collaborate with partnering agency and keep growing and expanding GeoEDC. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Reza. Oh, so that's what you've been working on. So thank you, everybody.
Yes.
And, so next on, we followed by NISM, also formerly known as OEM, and it will be led by Josh Friedman. Josh Friedman, a native New Yorker, has worked in the field of GIS for over 20 years. In 2008, Josh joined the GIS division of NISM, NYCEM, for New York City Emergency Management as a hazard impact modeler, GIS specialist to support the development of New York City's 2009 Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. He was a project manager for the 2013 update of the New York City's hurricane evacuation zones and has been a director of Geographic Information System at NISM since 2016. Well, This is a fun fact about him, and I have to tell everyone, share with them. I feel pretty safe knowing this now. He spends June through November scanning the forecast of hurricanes or coastal storms that might impact New York City. So, folks, if he doesn't answer your email as quickly as possible between June and November, you know what he's doing. That, Josh, thank you.
Thank you. And that was great. That gives me some cover there. I was going to say, I'm glad you feel secure, or I can say that I'm doing is watching, but do the best we can. So I thought I'd throw that in. We did start Atlantic Basin hurricane season for those tracking about a week ago. It runs 6 months from June 1st through November. In New York City, we really look at August 1st. So August, September, and October is our prime time. Those of you who have seen me perform before, this is one of my favorite songs, so you may have seen some of this, but just wanted to cover, we released new zones last year, and so thought it would be topical for some folks. Just quickly, a little bit about who we are at Emergency Management. We're the coordinating agency for New York City, so you see here kind of the main areas: planning and preparing, helping coordinate response and recovery, and helping educate the information through outreach, education, et cetera. Really, aside from the public education piece, it's helping coordinate, helping support all our other city partners as they respond directly to emergencies. Here, the wonderful disaster slide, really just to highlight, we chase a lot of weather, as I say, because there's no other sort of subject matter lead agency in the city, but really we are there to help with consequence management. So whether it's something that explodes or, a terrorist attack, a utility issue, natural hazards, et cetera, we're going to look at trying to minimize the impact to New Yorkers and helping coordinate the recovery. So to tie in, since this is supposed to be an AppFair, here's a quick view, and I'll show it again at the end. The current hurricane evacuation zone finder, hosted by our friends at OTI. I think, as mentioned, this will look somewhat different in the future, but just wanted to put that out there as a hook. So that's we don't build the app ourselves at Emergency Management, but there's a lot of work that goes into the data underneath it, specifically the evacuation zones. So just wanted to do a little bit of review of that. One of the things I always like to harp on, and those who know me, I will say this over and over again, we want to be careful, as always, I think, about the terminology we use when describing data, right? So in this case, I'm talking about hurricane evacuation zones, not flood zones, which is a lot of us like to use that term. If we're talking flood zones, we're most likely talking about FEMA's flood insurance maps, right? These have to do with building codes and lots of other fun things. They're different. They come out of a different model. They are than the hurricane evacuation zones, which are produced based on slosh data. As you can see, the storm surge model that comes out of the National Weather Service. And we're looking at data, for us, what's important is inundation, so how much water there is at a given location. But the important takeaway, these are things really just for evacuating from storm surge for life safety issues. The quick timeline of where we've come from. Our update cycle is driven really by when the Hurricane Center produces an updated model. Output tends to be about every 7 to 10 years based on their funding. And so you can see here the sort of modern era, as it were. In 2003, initial set of zones were released, updated just by happenstance after Sandy, and then again last spring. For sort of historical context, and this will help inform a little bit about how we've got to where we are now. This was what was in place through the 2012 season. So for Irene and for Sandy, the sort of inside baseball stuff, and we had to do some on-the-fly adjustments of these zones in advance of those events to make sure that everyone was accounted for. That's not what we want to be doing. And really the key here is, we're looking at worst case by particular storm categories, and we don't have a lot of flexibility, right? And this is the old population numbers, but we're either evacuating, roughly 400,000, 1 million, or, close to 2.5 million. So we decide based on our experience, consultation with the Weather Service experts, et cetera, that we need to look at what we call bearing-based zones. So basically, we're not just going to draw things based on the worst possible version of a Category 1. We're going to also take into account the direction that the storm is traveling in. And this is just an illustrative graphic to see why are we doing that, right? Both of these are Category 4 hurricanes traveling forward really, really fast. One of them is coming at us in a northeasterly direction, so it's kind of the Irene track, and one of them is coming at us in a west-northwest direction, kind of the Sandy track. That darker color, that's the potential worst case inundation from that west-northwest track. And that lighter pinkish color is the northeast track. You can see, right? I mean, that can be miles in places. There's a massive difference in inundation. If we have all the category 4s in one zone, we're going to need to cover all the category 4s. If we can look differently at grouping things, right, we can make sure that we're not, or attempts to not over evacuate. So we did a lot of work in 2013 evacuation zones were released. You can see here, so 2013, we come out with what looks, hopefully is familiar to most of you, right? It's going to look similar to what we have now. The big shift, we're not in 3 zones anymore, and we have 6 zones, right? So we have, even though there's huge amounts of people being dealt with, right, we have more flexibility. So no longer are we jumping by 1 million people per zone. We hope that we're able to be a lot targeted, more targeted. Apologies. So, just a little bit about why we moved right to new zones last year. I mentioned our update cycle is based on the storm surge model being updated by the National Hurricane Center. And so in 2020, they gave us a new, what they call basin or grid. This is this blue, if you can see it, fan-shaped color here. Short version, much higher resolution model, and they've done a lot of work to understand about how water flows, both for our particular area and looking at what they call roughness coefficient, so how water flows over, say, urban areas. So we think that's going to give us much more accurate data. So here's when I was talking about bearing-based zones, right? This is what we're looking at. When we get data from the experts at the Hurricane Center in terms of potential inundation for different types of storm scenarios, we have short version about 24 different scenarios. And so we were going to look, right, compare those categories regardless of storm category, et cetera, compare those scenarios to look for like areas, right? And so you can see here, these are 2 different storm surge modeled extents for potential storm scenarios, right? The one on the right is a category 1, and the one on the left is a category 4. We only deal with 1 through 4 here. We don't deal with 5s yet because the water is still cold enough. But the point of these images here, right? If you look, you're not, you're being correct if you think they look almost exactly the same. That's just happenstance, but that means we can group those together into a common scenario. So this is just happens to be some screenshots of some zone 6 scenarios, but basically we're going to look for storm scenarios that would potentially inundate similar areas and merge those things together to get some underlying inundation area. However, it's still all so we have these surge areas, right, but not very easy to message, not very easy to operationalize. So how are we turning these areas into evacuation zones, right? I said we have these jagged areas all over the place. We need to be able to tell residents what particular areas based on streets, essentially, right? And so we're doing this very conservatively. You can see on this image still, there's a zones 2 slosh area. Basically, we're saying we're ready, assuming high tide, to be conservative. And if any building on a block essentially is touched by a certain zone scenario, it's going to be drawn into that zone. It's not always hard and fast, right? There are certain places we're going to use local knowledge and make certain other decisions. The Rockaway Peninsula, for example, ranges from potentially far underwater at the western end to an area, a couple blocks in Far Rockaway in the eastern end that the models show as never being underwater. But because of access issues, right, all the healthcare facilities, et cetera, we're going to make the decision to put that all in zone 1. So we're reaching the end here. This is what we have in place now. It should look at a citywide scale pretty similar to what we had for the last 8 years or so. You can see the population counts are going up a little bit. The bulk of that is probably just due to the new census data. Really of note, what we've seen is that the lower numbered zones, zones 1 and 2, are covering a larger area. And that matches what the experts have told us. Those quote unquote lower end storms are a little bit more impactful than they used to be. So just the last slide or two here, just want to reinforce, since I am in emergency management, in the end, right, we've heard a lot about categories here and bearings and stuff. This is kind of the sausage making of how we take this scientific data and try and translate it into something that can be operational. But this is really the threat that we're working against, and we want to try and protect New Yorkers from. Right, when we say we're evacuating some zone, this is the reason. Zone 3 is going to be evacuated because we could have potentially up to 19 feet of inundation, meaning you're standing on the sidewalk in Breezy Point, you could have 19 feet of water where you are. This is up every time all year, so please we encourage the public to go learn their zone. The evacuation centers are updated for this year. And just from a data standpoint, I think coming soon, the underlying evacuation data will be up on open data. Usually we send folks to the city planning site to get zones if they want, but that's also up on open data. And there's the Know Your Zone page and Hurricane Zone Finder. Encourage folks to go check it out. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you everyone for your patience. And thank you, Josh, for that very comprehensive look at your work. And every questions, please put in the chat. So we are tracking all the questions as we go along. So next, we have a very exciting presentation, I have to say, something I've been personally been looking forward to by the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities, and Wale Sabre. I hope you're getting ready. He was born in Egypt and raised in New York City. Wale has had significant transitions in his life, first from one country to another, and then through varying degrees of vision. As a blind New Yorker and a disability rights advocate, Wale makes sure that the City of New York's digital products can be accessed by all, whether it's by conducting website audits, providing staff awareness training, or representing the disability community in his everyday life. Wherever he goes, Wale is constantly changing perceptions, one situation at a time. Wale, all you.
All right, how you doing? Let me just share my slides and we'll get started. Oops, sorry, 1 second. All right, just to confirm, y'all can hear me, y'all can see me, y'all can see the slides, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. My name is Wale Sabri. I'm the Digital Accessibility Coordinator at the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. I am responsible for helping New York City agencies in making their digital products accessible to the disability community. I identify as blind, and a lot of the work that I do revolves around testing, quality assurance, reporting, and resolving accessibility issues and designing around accessibility as well. So today I'm just going to talk to you about maps, data visualizations, and accessible design. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So who are we? The Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. We're the city's, we've existed since 1970s, and we are basically the city's accessibility consultants. So various city agencies reach out to us for guidance or even trainings on how to meet the needs of disabled New Yorkers. We share resources and follow up on complaints with disabled New Yorkers, and we raise awareness publicly about the importance of inclusion and accessibility. So today we're going to cover a few things: intro to digital accessibility, intro accessible design as well, accessible first design, maps and data visualizations, and testing with the disability community. This was originally a 2-hour presentation, so I'm going to be flying through this. I will share a link at the end for the recording of the 2-hour presentation if you are interested in getting more in depth. All right, so intro to digital accessibility. Who are we designing for? What are the standards? And what are assistive technologies? So Who are we designing for? Disabilities that affect the eyes, ears, hands, and brain. So folks who are blind, folks who are deaf or hard of hearing, folks who have motor function disabilities and might not be able to use a mouse, but could use a keyboard or an alternative input device, such as switch controls or sip and puff devices or anything like that. Disabilities that affect the brain, so including learning disabilities, sensory or like disabilities that affect someone's ability to process information, developmental, intellectual disabilities. And we also write in plain language. So this benefits folks with limited English proficiencies. Next slide. The standards. There's the World Wide Web Consortium, a group that kind of creates the internet, the rules of the internet, and they have the web content accessibility guidelines. Currently, we're on version 2.0. And there's 3 levels of compliance. The City of New York and most organizations comply with the middle level, which is level AA. Okay, and they revolve around 4 core principles: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So will people with disabilities be able to perceive the information that your map or data visualization is conveying? Are there text alternatives, for instance? If your map is a list of locations, right, is showing locations, is there a text list indexed by headings to provide an alternative? Operable, do controls in your map have keyboard access? Is there on-screen controls for instance, touch gestures, and things like that? Understandable, will people with disabilities be able to understand what they're doing on your website? Do you have instructions, right? Do you have required fields marked with text alternatives, or are they just highlighted in red? Is there error reporting when folks are filling out a form and they make a mistake? Is it available in text? That kind of stuff. And robust just speaks to the experience being similar, hopefully, across different platforms with different browsers, different operating systems, devices, and even assistive technologies. What is assistive tech? It's any tool that a person with a disability can use to access the physical or virtual environments. So it's as basic as a pair of glasses or crutches or a cane, and it's as high tech as voice assistants or AI. I personally use something called a screen reader. It is a synthesized speech engine that reads aloud the contents of the screen. And I don't use a mouse. I use the keyboard to navigate. There's plenty of other things like magnification software. There's voice commands, right? There are switch controls, which are big buttons that could be customized to do any function. So it's important that when we make our content, we make it compatible and accessible with assistive technologies. All right, so intro to accessible design. So here is, I like to talk about accessibility in the old kind of, I don't know if it's a proverb or analogy, but it takes a village to raise a child, and it certainly takes a village to raise the child that is accessibility. Everybody has a role or a part to play, and including the content creators all the way down to quality assurance, right? So if you're a content creator, are you writing in plain language? Are you writing alt text for your images? If you're a graphic designer, are you using accessible colors and accessible fonts? UX designers, are you designing the experience for just mouse users, or are you designing an experience for keyboard users, for screen reader users, for speech users that use verbal commands, right? All of these users need their own flow that is well thought out, right? Otherwise, you're leaving people stranded along the journey because this specific part of the journey requires you to use a mouse, right? And so this happens to me a lot as a screen reader and a keyboard user. If something doesn't have keyboard access, I'm stuck and I cannot move forward with the process or get the information I'm looking for. Right, your developers should be building accessible templates and libraries. They should be implementing all of the information that is passed down to them from the alt text to how to build labels, right? Include labels for things, and moving focus of keyboard moving the keyboard focus to appropriate areas and such like that. And quality assurance should always be doing accessibility testing. All right. So as I said, designed for various communities. I said that before, so I'm just gonna move on from this slide. All right, and an accessibility first approach. So accessibility is often tacked at the end of a process. We recently started using an accessibility first approach, basically designing something to be accessible first and then adding things like visuals to it, or the visual design. We did this with a calendar that would be embedded onto nyc.gov. And we used a lot of things like we were going to make it into a table first, but we realized actually that it could be better to have it as headings and lists. And each day has a heading, and that heading tells you how many events are going on that day. It's also in the keyword tab order. We also don't include days that don't have events so that the users can quickly skip to all the days that do have events. Visually, it looks just like a calendar, right? But we built it so that it has good screen reader access, that any dynamic content is read aloud using ARIA Live. There's a lot I can talk about here, but there's a lot more for me to cover. So I'm just gonna move on. All right, so now we're gonna talk about the accessibility of maps and data visualizations. So we're going to talk about defining the problem. The easiest way to move forward in making your map or data visualization accessible is what information is it conveying? Defining that problem first, and then thinking about each of the users and how to build features or flows that will work for those users I mentioned, being screen reader users, keyboard users, low vision users, and voice command users. All right, so just to be upfront with you all, the state of the maps and data visualizations right now is it's in its infancy stages. So if we're raising that child called accessibility, it's very much a baby. There's a lot of room and a lot of room for progress to be made in this field. There really aren't any accessible out-of-the-box tools that you can use, or tools that are out of the box that will create an accessible map or data visualization for you. And this is an area where we continue to push vendors, and it's up to us as customers, right, to push vendors to be more accountable in creating tools that are inclusive and, you know, are out of the box and that can create accessible content for us. As it stands, we do have to hand code a lot of the accessibility, even when we use third-party tools, which is not fun for anybody, right? All right, so defining the problem for maps. What is your map conveying? Is it a list of locations? Is it defining various zones like the hurricane evacuation zone finder? And that is one that we worked on for accessibility. I worked with Josh and the GIS team at Do It. And we created an accessible template using the hurricane evacuation zone map. And we did that by first creating a search field that was accessible. We also have a button with screen reader instructions so that if you don't know how to use the map with a screen reader, you can get instructions on what to do. And then once you enter an address, you are taken to a dialog that lets you know what zone you're in and if there's an evacuation zone in effect. So we worked on all that, shifting focus to the modal, right? And after you dismiss it, where does your focus land? We have a heading that also shows you the all of the facilities, the evacuation facilities that are available based on the address that you inputted. That's indexed in lists and indexed by headings. So each location has a heading, and at the beginning of that list of locations is a bigger heading that says how many evacuation zones are currently being viewed. And this is something that is still live today. You can check it out. If we have time and interest at the end, I'm more than happy to do a screen reader demo of the hurricane evacuations map. So is your map showing areas of high or low concentration, right? Like a heat map? Or is your map for getting directions or submitting feedback? So we have Department of Transportation has a lot of maps where you can submit feedbacks about streets and sidewalks, right? So that's how you start, right? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? It's probably one of these things on the screen now. For simple maps that are going to be images and non-interactive, you can just include alternative text to describe them. You can include the, the geographic area that the map is, right? The 5 boroughs of New York City, or Manhattan, right? And then whatever information is important about that map. So areas of high concentration or low concentration, or how many locations are being highlighted? What's the significance? Maybe, so yeah. All right, so in my bigger activity, I would let folks take a chance to describe this map, but think about what you would want to describe in this map, right? This is a California population distribution heat map, right? And it has the legend key, and so I would describe the colors here, what they mean, and then some areas where there's high concentration and low concentration. That would include that in the alt text, right? This is a non-interactive map. For interactive maps, we got to do a lot more. All right, so for data visualizations, right? Once again, defining the problem. What information is being conveyed? Right? Is it a pie chart split up into different slices? Is it a line graph that's showing a trend over time or over a range of some sort? Is it bar graphs comparing different indicators? So that's where you start with data visualizations and how to frame what the problem is that you're trying to solve or what the information that is being conveyed. From there, you would include alt text, right? If it's a non-interactive data visualization, you put it in a table, or you can include alt text, right, for the graphs, and name the graph. What information is it generally conveying in a short description, and then include some key indicators: high point, low point, midpoint, right? Or some trends, right? Is this steadily rising, steadily declining? Is it going up and down, right? So those are things that you can include in your alt text. All right, so this is a pie chart, right? So it's a simple pie chart that shows methods of transportation used in New York, I believe. So yellow for walking, which is 10%. Green for bus, which is 40%. And right, so you can name each one and how much percentage it is and the color of it, right? That's basically what you would include in the alt text for that. Now, for more interactive maps, right, you gotta think about, you gotta have a lot more tools up your sleeve. So you need to think about screen reader access, keyboard access, visual access for low vision users who use magnifiers. That's different from blind users who use screen readers, and formatting, just formatting your data in a way that makes sense to people with disabilities. So for your screen reader access, and Jin, feel free to stop me if I'm going way over, or I can keep going. You can let me know.
You have some time.
Great. Okay, so for screen readers, right, here's some tools that you should know about that help you design better for screen reader users. Alt text for images, I've been mentioning that, right? Or even hiding images. Sometimes if the map itself is not relevant to a blind person, we will use something like ARIA hidden to make sure that screen readers don't read that content to the user. So HTML tables and lists indexed by headings, right? So for maps, generally we go with lists that are indexed by headings that you can filter using a search field or even community board, zip code, that kind of stuff. So that's for maps. For data visualizations, we generally try to go with a table and a real table, like an HTML table, as opposed to something that visually looks like a table, which is what most data visualizations are. So most data visualization products usually have like an alternative view where you can use an actual HTML table, and that's what we recommend for that kind of data. Filter and search, right? So making sure if you have dynamic content that you have access to tools like the ARIA Live attribute to have screen readers announce that content has changed, or if there's a status update, or if you're showing results, anything like that. So for keyboard access, so making sure that all navigational elements and filter elements have keyboard access that they are included in the keyboard tab order. Keyboard visual focus, so everything that is in the keyboard tab order, when it receives keyboard to focus, is that visual aesthetic? Does it make it stand out? Is it clear? Persistent on-screen controls as an alternative for touch gestures. So those pinch gestures, right? Pinch to zoom. There should always be a zoom in and zoom out button on your map that are persistent and don't go away. And then shifting focus. So focus management is very big for screen reader and keyboard users when it comes to dynamic content. If a modal dialog pops up, you as a developer need to make sure that screen reader and keyboard focus is moving to that modal when it pops up. And when that modal is dismissed, the keyboard and screen reader focus need to move back to where they were before the modal popped up. Or if you are performing a search, you need, once that search is performed and that the content is dynamically displayed, you need to move screen reader and keyboard focus to the beginning of the search results area. Visual access, designing for different screen sizes, right? Using accessible fonts on your map or data visualization. So accessible fonts include sans serif fonts, Arial, Verdana, Helvetica, Tahoma. Support for text resizing and reflow, right? So that folks who use magnification, when they enlarge the contents of the screen, they can actually read the small text that, or the text that is on the map instead of it staying small. High color contrast, making sure that you're choosing your colors wisely and you're testing them for high color contrast for the map, or even having a button to change your map colors to that so that they have a high color contrast mode. Don't rely on color to convey things. If you are marking something with a color, add a shape to it, add some kind of visual aesthetic that doesn't rely on color alone. Clearly define your map borders so that one can tell where one area ends or one neighborhood ends and one begins, or one state ends and one begins, FYI, or anything like that. And we built this into the hurricane evacuation zone finder. We do have an opacity or transparency, a way to adjust that for the map. So you can customize the way that it looks to suit your visual needs. Formatting.
Sorry,
done?
we need a minute to wrap up, if possible.
All right, yeah, I'm almost there. Absolutely. So formatting is very important in that just make sure you are using proper HTML elements. Something could look like a heading if you make the text bigger and bold, but if it does not have an H1, H2, H3 tag, then it technically is not a real heading. So make sure you are tagging things correctly. And proper states for dynamic elements, like if you have accordions, they need to tell the user expanded or collapsed. And that is it for formatting. Always link to your data. That is, whether you have an interactive or non-interactive map or data visualization, always have a link to download the data set as an accessible spreadsheet. And finally, testing. You need to be testing your product with people with disabilities, and you need to be doing it throughout your process. Test continuously with people with disabilities. You should have people with disabilities on your team if possible, right? Especially if you are some kind of vendor that creates some GIS product. There's no better way to design for people with disabilities than actually including people with disabilities as part of your team. So thank you very much for bearing with me. I know I took longer than everyone else, but I hope this was informative and helpful. And I'm glad that we weren't interrupted.
Thank you, LA. This is quite important. And maybe we'll invite you back for the maybe 1.5 hour version of your 2 hour presentation.
Sure. Is it okay if I post the link to the full recording in the chat?
Please do.
Okay.
I'm sure there are others who would like to. We did rush you. My apologies, but I think at least making us aware of it is the very good beginning.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So moving on to our last but not least presentation from the formal MODA, now ODA, or Office of Data Analytics under OTI, presented by Cynthia Nicklin. Cynthia is the Data Operations Manager at Office of Data Analytics at OTI. She has worked at the NYC 311 managing the content for the city's services, and more recently served as Director of Data Governance and Open Data Coordinator for the Department of Buildings. She is a digital librarian with a long history working with the city's data and is passionate about improving access, awareness, and governance, something we should all pay greater attention to when we do our data. Fun fact, she is an avid gamer who's currently spending way too much time building farms and editing the wiki for Medieval Dynasty. You know, I never knew about this thing. Is like rural SimCity. Is that what this is?
Yeah, sort of like that.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy, all you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me today. I want to talk about metadata standards. We have a document that I want to share with you to get feedback from everyone here. So first, I want to explain who we are. I work at the Office of Data Analytics, formerly MODA. We work with city agencies to use their data to help make New York work more effectively and efficiently. We have 3 branches, the Open Data Program, which I'll talk more about in a minute, the analytics team. Yes.
Cindy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Your screen sharing is showing both your email and the PowerPoint presentation. Is this how you?
Thank you.
Okay.
That was not the right screen. Let's try this screen. Now you should be seeing the right one. All right, yes. So the analytics team, they use data to improve city agency operations. So they work to dive into that data across city agencies, especially for more complicated analyses. The data ops team is the 3rd branch, which works to facilitate citywide data sharing, integration, and work on the infrastructure for doing that. So open data, this is the main reason why I'm here, because of our experience with the Open Data Program. We support the Open Data Portal. We have more than 3,000 data sets available there. Some are geospatial data sets, some mentioned by some folks here on the call earlier. We facilitate a group of 100 open data coordinators who manage all of that data and metadata. And we have more than 1.5 million visitors that came in 2020. So there's a lot of users who need to understand that data. And how do they understand that data? All of our open data coordinators need to put together documentation that explains it. So I just wanted to explain why documentation is important. Think about if you've ever written a piece of code and come back to it like a year later and you're like, what the heck was I doing? This is a love letter to yourself or to people who use your data. It's a way to explain what it is that you're trying to do, what it is that, that other people using your data should know about it. There's several types of data documentation. I'm focusing on data dictionaries today, but some other examples are user guides, release notes, some diagrams. There's lots of different ways to explain what's in your data. And part of the reason I'm here today is because city agencies, when you come to work at a city agency, you don't necessarily have training in what documentation should look like. So we serve as a central point for the city to provide templates, to provide guidance on what information should be included. So when you're creating documentation for a data set that you are designing, you should think about your users. What is it that they will come to your data? What knowledge will they come to your data with? What questions will they come to your data with? Try to put yourself in their shoes. Wale was just talking about a lot of different ways to optimize your products for the people using them. So this is just another way to think about what your users will need when they're coming. I have some examples that I want to go through to explain and not be as abstract. So I used to work at the Department of Buildings, and I was the open data coordinator. So I was one of those people in charge of creating this metadata for the open data portal. And one of the things that really struck me was that people using that data would come to me often and want to know, when was a building built? And that question is really actually very complicated, because a building goes through many different stages. They'll let people live there and work there before it's completely finished. And then even after it looks like it's finished, the paperwork might not be done. So there's several different dates in Department of Buildings data. There's the date that the certificate of occupancy is issued, which that's the date if you want to know when people start living there. There's a date where the paperwork is signed off, and that's a paperwork date. The building might have been built a year or two before that date. So you have to really understand the difference between those data elements in the data set if you want to use it for the purposes that you are using it for. Another example from Department of Buildings is they built a new system called DOB Now. And when they released the elevator data, there's a field that tells you what type of elevators there are. There's passenger elevators, there's freight elevators. There's also something called shipboard elevators. And when I saw that as the open data coordinator, I thought, that's amazing. I didn't know we had ships and boats as part of our jurisdiction. Well, they don't really. But there is shipboard elevator in the data. And I learned that that was because of a system issue when it was first released. So what we had to do is put that in the documentation to explain to anybody who's using that open data data set that if you see that value, it really means passenger data, passenger elevator. So these are the types of things that you should think about when you're creating documentation for your data. So we put together a template. It's very closely based on the open data dictionary, but we added some elements that you can see here for geospatial data. And I would love for this audience to take a look at it, give us some feedback. Is there anything we're missing? Is there anything that's confusing? Should we remove some of it? So I'm going to put the link in the chat after I stop talking and my email address. I'd love to hear your feedback on whether this might be useful. We will be using this as we move toward more permanent technical solutions. Chris and Tom earlier were talking about the plans for the GIS platform going forward. So this will help inform what kind of metadata goes into that platform, what kind of metadata might go into a citywide data catalog. So your feedback is really important. That's it from me, so thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Appreciate that. Learned a lot. Now I have to go back and look at what I've done in the past. Darn it. Thank you. Now we're going to transition from our sorry. Now we're going to transition from from our friends in city agencies to two efforts and grants, and I guess it's R&D effort by GISMO and partners. First will be with the underground infrastructure mapping with GISMO and NYU, presented by Al. And a bit of shine and adulation and my full respect to Al. Al has worked for 35 years in New York City government and served as the New York City GIS director for 4 years. He was also the Northeastern Regional Manager of the DHS Critical Infrastructure Program. He was GISMO's president for 8 years, right before yours truly. He's currently continue to contribute to the GISMO and GIS community by continue to serve on the GISMO board member and consults with NYU and Open Geospatial Consortium. Lots of C's in there. Al, all you. Thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry. Fun fact, he named trees along the riverside. That's a good one. I didn't know. You around
I'm the only one I know who gives names to the elm trees along Riverside Drive.
yes,
But
and I'm very
it's okay.
sorry if you said a few were recently cut down. And also, my apologies. Accompanying you, your partner in this presentation is Peter
Gamelch. Mhm.
Yes, Peter is a UNUM project manager, and UNUM stands for Rural Unification of Underground Resiliency Measures. He has a master's degree from NYU in environmental education with a strong GIS background. Thank you, gentlemen. Take it away.
Okay, well, first thing is I just want to give a shout out to Jack Eichenbaum, who was the founder of GISMO and is on this call. And Jack was recently awarded a President Emeritus from GISMO. And I'd just like to welcome Jack here and congratulate him on his President Emeritus status. And with that, I'll go into the presentation. This is just an opening screenshot, which shows you that concerns about the underground are in people's minds. They make magazines. It's because it's invisible, but at the same time, it's so important. We could not have New York City without our underground infrastructure or the underground environment. Things started in mapping, as many of you know, and I'll just give this a little briefly, with the development of the city's base map from 1995 to 2000, where we got aerial photography and then laid over it all these layers of buildings and parcels and roadways. And now there are literally thousands of such layers. However, most of the layers pertain to things above the street level or on the street level. And it's been a real struggle to get underground data, which is, again, so important, but so difficult to get. Recent disaster events in New York City, 9/11 and Hurricane Sandy, however, changed the way people looked at this, because in both of these cases, underground infrastructure was heavily implicated. And there had to be a scramble to get the data that was possible. For 9/11, it took more than 10 days to assemble underground infrastructure data beneath the World Trade Center. And with Sandy, because we did not have good underground infrastructure analytics, literally billions of dollars of damage was done that could have been avoided. So when I mentioned Wendy Dorf and Jim McConnell, both longtime city workers, and now Wendy on her own, we've been collaborating to try to move the issue of underground infrastructure mapping along for the past 20 years. And thank God we were recently joined by NYU and Deborah Laffer, Professor Deborah Laffer and Professor Ray Zimmerman and Peter and a number of others who went out and got $1 million National Science Foundation grant. And so now we're sort of really in business. This, if you will, is just a concept of what we're looking to do ultimately, is to develop a 3D environment for underground infrastructure and the underground environment. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Peter Gamelch, who is project manager for this project for NYU, who's been doing a great job, and he'll take you through UNUM's approach that both myself and Wendy and the professors and others are all working on. So Peter, it's all yours, and tell me when you want me to switch slides.
Cool, thanks so much. Hi everybody, I'm Peter Gamelch. I'm part of the research staff at NYU Center for Urban Science and Progress. And one of my main tasks as of late is project manager for the UNUM grant. If we go to the next slide, I guess, for those who aren't familiar, because I know there's a lot of GISMO people involved, Alan and Wendy, with the project, but if you're not familiar with what our grant is doing, the crux of the project is piloting the use of OGC's muddy data model to rethink ways to visualize our underground with the many different layers of assets owned that are hidden below our feet. What we're seeing on the left is what our utilities used to be prior to the Great Blizzard in the 1800s. So everything was above ground. And after the blizzard and a few other things, we began to understand that all of our assets need to be shifted and managed in a new way. And now we're sort of left in the position that we're seeing on the right. We sort of have this complicated network of accountability and coordination between all the stakeholder groups that we're seeing on the screen. And we all have to work very closely together to ensure that these assets are maintained and managed effectively to ensure, that they continually provide service to our city. Next slide. Sort of a quick overview. These are all the organizations that have partnered with us over the year and a half of our grant. We had stage 1 start in January of 2021. And all of them have helped us in a variety of forms, starting out with, introducing us to other stakeholders that are relevant to our group, helping us host community workshops, or participating at a higher level in any of our sort of technical advisory groups and our advisory board. Next slide, please. So we've identified 2 study areas to pilot this data model work. And what we've tried to do is encapsulate 2 extremes of infrastructure. So the first one, we have Sunset Park in Brooklyn. It's a coastal neighborhood, very high residential, low capital investment, and is also a site of a lot of old infrastructure. And as a consequence of having these old assets, a lot of experience in our study site with sinkholes and water main breaks. So it's important to us to be able to map old assets and be able to respond rapidly when these sorts of issues come up. As we'll see in the next slide, our other pilot area is East Midtown. So again, this is the opposite of the spectrum. Huge hub of transportation, Grand Central, tons of subways, low residential, high capital investment, and just an example of an issue in the past decade was the steam pipe explosion in the 2010s that we saw in our study site, and just a way that, we're trying to better understand how we can avoid these kinds of issues with a better understanding and visualization of our data. Next slide. One of the key deliverables for our project, there's a few of them. The first one has been sort of this open infrastructure data compilation that's been led by a few of the master's students who are working on our project here at NYU Tandon. In short, what they're doing is going through and cataloging all of the various open source data layers that exist in various clearinghouses. This goes from New York City, state and federal. And the idea is to, take a lot of this data that may be siloed and may be, on a hard drive or on a server managed by whatever department or agency produced it, and putting it together in a publicly available resource that neighborhood bids, community boards, or city agencies could reference whenever they need it for things like capital planning or infrastructure projects. On the next slide, we'll see another example of a project that we're working on. This is sort of a combination of existing technology and technology available to us through our university and our research partners, and that's combining. What we're seeing on the left is a high density point cloud LiDAR scan that was taken with an aerial drone. On the right is an example of a GPR scan of the underground, and on the bottom is an example. We've been holding a handful of community workshops, and with that we've developed a phone app in which members of the community are sort of briefed of sorts how they can identify issues with infrastructure in their neighborhoods and then report them in a common tool. So this can be things like a garbage can overflowing, a phone booth being out, or a catch basin cover being flooded. And also being able to use the low cost examples of LiDAR, like a lot of the new iPhones are equipped with a free app that can be used to, create a 3D LiDAR model of something small like a fire hydrant or even a car. And the idea here is to combine all of these and make a digital twin using these different layers and different technology sources to create a tool that city agencies or community groups can leverage and harness this data that's now available to us. On the next slide, just to sort of show where we're at and where we've come from. So as I said, we had a planning phase back in the winter of last year. That was basically building a stakeholder group, holding a lot of interviews, getting letters of support. And through that, we were awarded stage 2 funding. So now that's starting to do all of these community facing projects, beginning the projects that I just explained. And then the crux of the project, which is still ongoing, is doing the data pilot for the muddy data standard to help us visualize these data layers. So where we're at now, we've developed a legal data sharing agreement that's been distributed to the 5 asset holders that have agreed to be a part of our pilot. Our collaborators at NISM, Hunter College, and OGC are leading sort of the technical component of this project. And then over the next few months, hoping to get the first batch of the data for our 2 sites and begin to do this work using the muddy data standard. And then we'll be using the outputs of that data work to hold some workshops for the relevant decision makers in New York City to begin to understand what rolling out this kind of workflow for data would mean for Manhattan, for Brooklyn, for the whole city, and beyond. And I'll pass it back over to Alan. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. And now you've heard the word muddy a couple of times, so I can tell you, as you can see, that it stands for Model for Underground Data Definition and Integration. And I think the New York team 5 years ago understood that one of the impediments to being able to map the underground infrastructure is everyone had their own conception of the data that might be used and the standards that might be used to represent that data and the formats and the media and so forth. And so we recognized that one of the things we had to do as a first step was to develop a data model that would, if implemented, allow the data from Con Ed, Department of Environmental Protection, MTA, Port Authority, to be brought together seamlessly and quickly on top of a common base map. So what you see here is a very high level conceptual diagram of what that data model looks like. In the center, it has network features. On the bottom, you see the attributes that are associated with network features. You see upper a ways on the right, accessory features, and also the environment that surrounds these networks that would include soil, bedrock, water, remnants of things long abandoned, basements, foundations, chemical composition, et cetera. And that these go into forming networks of utilities with good, accurate location for them and proximity to each other. And the areas, interest areas that these networks fall into. So this is the basics. If you want, there's a much more complicated version of this that you can see, but we've actually assembled an international team of data modeling experts to work this into shape so that when the data comes in to Unum from the different utilities in the pilot areas, we have a framework to put that data and to integrate it and make it interoperable. Another aspect of that, and I'm sorry for this, just got way more involved than I thought it would, is to also typify the underground environment that surrounds utilities, which is also very important because everything rests on the environment or is embedded in the environment. So just to look, not being too complicated, at the categories of underground environmental data, we have the abandoned remnants, the hazard zones, the flows and fluxes, because the underground is in constant movement, especially the fluids and the gases that are underground, the geology itself, non-utility build features, and ground coverage, which is very important, whether it's permeable or not permeable. So this is all, we've got a long way with this. We've got a good framework for the data that will be coming in. And you might be saying, well, you've been working on this for a long time. And what makes you think you can really do it? Well, I mean, we get skeptical about our abilities to make this happen too, but we are very encouraged by the fact that the Ordnance Survey has actually gotten approval and funding for a project called NUAR to National Underground Asset Register to map the underground of the entire UK. So I guess my saying is, if they can do it, we can do it. And actually, we're learning a lot from their implementation thus far, and we will be working in tandem with them, and we hope that other countries also go down this path so we can continue to share information. One more point, I think that's it. One more point I'd like to make is that it's somewhat remarkable that between this presentation and the one to follow is that GISMO has helped leverage hundreds, actually millions of dollars in grant money, working with key partners to look at innovative technology and innovative solutions. And I think one of the benefits that you all, many of you who work for city government would get, is that if you join GISMO, you can take part in these kinds of explorations and additional projects, things that you might not be able to do in your city job because you're so busy answering day-to-day needs. Anyway, we encourage you, again, using this as an example, to join GISMO and take part in this. There's plenty of new technology coming around, and we should be looking at it and experimenting with it. So with that, Jen, it's all yours.
Thank you, Peter and Al. This is great. And our last quick presentation is a video, a 6-minute video. Please stick around for Q&A if people are able to stay a little bit longer. And just a little bit on the presenter for the video is you're about to watch is Theo Gottman. He's the founder of Basel Labs, a big data consumer intelligence startup that helps organizations frequently consume consumers' patterns and journeys. His work has been featured in Forbes, Business Insiders, City Lab, and national journals. Theo earned his bachelor's degree in government from Georgetown University, graduating with honors with distinction, and he was selected as a 2019 Fulbright Research Scholarship recipient and regularly speaks at entrepreneurship, data, and tech. And we were very fortunate to have him on board with the GISMO for the DP21 project. And he is globe-trotting somewhere on the other side of the world. So with that, he left us a lovely 6-minute video. Please enjoy. Thank you, Amy.
Okay, cool. Second time recording, to be honest. I think I went way over the first time, so I have a stopwatch right here. Hello, it's great to meet everyone virtually, and I think I'm recording a couple hours ahead. So great to meet everyone in the future. Let's go past the corny jokes about being remote. I'm calling in from Abu Dhabi right now. I know Jin and Amy have a "Where's Waldo" joke going, so I'll wear the striped shirt next time. Without further ado, excited to tell you about the collaboration between what we've been able to build with the voice survey and GISMO on this project, the Disaster Pilot 2021 with OGC. So it was amazing to work with Jin, Amy, and Al. So let's dive in. We're already 55 seconds in, so 4 minutes to go. All right, really quickly about the pilot. It's eyes in the sky, feet to the ground. I love the catchphrase there. Fundamentally, we're not just trying to be GIS people who have really, really good satellite imagery and can map things based on all of these data sets from the government, but really, we don't want to forget the human element at the center of everything. And so when we're talking about a flooding disaster scenario in Manitoba, Canada, or along the Ritmak River in Peru, we want to make sure that we're having community voice always coming in. So this is a multilingual voice note survey. The idea is that it's never going to replace 911, but in the case of where 911 is overwhelmed, wouldn't it be great to have a service that people can leave open-ended feedback that gets classified, is geolocated based on their device, and then can be mapped live, right, on ArcGIS, QGIS, or whatever mapping software. I mean, there's so many these days. And the key thing I want to highlight with this slide in particular is rapid and iterative. As the crisis evolves, can you change the questions so that you're seeing responses? And I'll just show you here. We want to study this area. You're getting responses coming in. You know where to prioritize your limited resources. But hey, like now we need to adapt our questions. So making sure that you can edit the questions. You don't have to change any of the deployed QR codes or URLs on the websites of the government or wherever. that you've texted out, people can just keep responding to that same link, keep scanning those same QR codes, and you can change your questions and map out new things that you want to find out. So as the crisis evolves, the survey evolves with you. Since we're already at 2:53, I'm going to skip through this and let's just show you the platform. I've already logged in, organized by collection. So if you have a collection of surveys, in this case, OGC demos, we can add in something like, I think I was just saying surveying remotely was when I was doing this the first time around and recorded a couple too many minutes in, and we can say like, where are you responding from? You can ask users for their GPS location, completely optional. The idea is if you want this to be anonymous, it totally can be. We have text, voice, multiple choices. Voice is where we, oh, sorry, I just, for that survey description, I just wrote in the question, but where are you responding from? Okay, the translation. I don't speak Arabic, unfortunately, given my region, but we're just going to imagine that I can speak very good Spanish and can write that in Spanish here. You can add as many translations as you want. Okay, creating this, and I know that it should work. So here we go. Surveyor knows your GPS, yes. So I was wondering if this was gonna work the first time around that I was recording this video, because I'm screen recording and everything, so I didn't know if the Chrome was gonna capture this. Just so you know, if you want to see this on a mobile device, this is what it would look like. So I'm gonna stop the recording, complete the survey. Okay, wonderful. Let's go in here and we can go to answers. We can load our answers, and just like that, it's live, right? So you can see the, oh, let's actually view it by responding here. So this is everything that I was saying. It would also be recorded with the translation if I was speaking a different language. And we have this whole other set of things that I don't have time for to explain, but basic keyword classification and natural language processing. So the machine will identify certain words that it thinks are important in the responses of a specific survey. And you can drag and drop those into different topic bins. And with those topic bins, it will go back and classify all of the incoming responses and all the future ones as well. And then you can actually go and map those. So I'll just show you this real quick. Jen, Amy, sorry ahead of time for, and everyone for going over here, but you can return it as a GORSS, so you can go directly into your mapping software and plug that in to get live data, data at regular intervals, or you can actually fetch all that data as well as a REST API. I'll just say really quickly that I'm excited where Ella is going. Very excited for future collaborations. This doesn't just have to be for Manitoba, Canada, and the RITMOC in Peru, but even mapping out not just for disaster situations, but also in New York City of understanding community voice in a whole array of languages and being able to let everyone give feedback. And I think that's, and mapping it, of course. So I think that's where we really overlap with GISMO, and very excited to see where future collaborations bring us. So thank you so much, guys.
Well, thank you, Theo, from to wherever you are, Abu Dhabi. I think that's what you said. He is indeed GISMO's new Waldo. With that, I think that is the end of the presentation, and we can open up to the questions. I hope most of us is still here. All the presenters are still here. There are various questions for all of you. But the first very wonderful question is from Julia and Lisa. They want to know, what is a neighborhood? I think, Nisam, would you like to take that one on? Josh?
I can try. I would certainly need colleagues from city planning. I know that that is a very controversial thing. I would be careful, just like zip codes are, areas that can be defined, but they are very much subject to interpretation. I mean, at the city level, so the most official things, right, are the like the NTAs, neighborhood tabulation areas, or now community district tabulation areas, or geographies that come out of city planning, and I believe they have a neighborhood layer as well. So I'd say in the data sense, that's what could be considered quote unquote official neighborhoods. Beyond that, I think it's a bit of a wild west, and it's maybe good to consider just, consider your base geographies, right? I think Google and the real estate world have a lot of sway over, I can nearly stick one of my feet in the Gowanus Canal, but I live in Park Slope, apparently.
Josh, I really, really, really wanted to avoid cutting you off in any possible way. But I can give a more detailed answer for that.
Yes, you were probably the better person. Thank you.
But, well, no, for the particular data that we were demoing in that Data Explorer thing, I had to look this up because we actually maintain this database with the citywide street centerline database with city planning, and so that is kind of a city planning data set that they've created, and so from what I was able to research, this is not one of the ones that we actually maintain here at OTI. But so those neighborhood polygons are created by trying to fit these PUMA, which are PUMA zones, which is like a census term, which is public use microdata areas. New York City has 55 of these PUMA data areas. And so what city planning did to create that neighborhood polygon data is to kind of try to fit try to match those PUMA zones to complete census tracts and then give them neighborhood names. So that's kind of why, like, they may not jive with your personal feelings about neighborhood, but this was done to create like a neighborhood aggregation thing that you could do. And I think that's what they're for. So probably, again, like someone from city planning would have a better idea. One of the planners or someone in like a population division there would probably be a good person to ask about what they use those for. But that's kind of how I would answer that.
Chris, would you mind putting the link to the DCP's definition of NTA perhaps in there if you have it readily handy?
I can put in what is in exactly the metadata that we have for that document. I'll post that and I'll just copy that into the chat, which kind of explains what I tried to explain probably in a better way. Yes. Than I did.
No, I should have also, that was for Josh and Chris, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I'll give Josh a shot first without interruption, sorry. This could be an ongoing joke, sorry. I hope Julia and Lisa, hope that answered your question. And the next question from Elidia is asking if we can share the materials from this presentation. The recording we will be editing a little bit before we send it out there. And yes, we're gonna ask each other presenter, perhaps those who have who joined us here will get some version of it with the permission of all our presenters. And the next question is from Taltine Scott. And does the evacuation, this one's definitely for Josh, does the evacuation evacuation zones include high tide infrastructure? Did I get that right?
I think so. Yeah, I looked through.
Yeah,
I mean, I can do a couple
thank you.
quick hits if that makes sense. If someone asked high tide, yes. So that's, all the data we get includes high tide. For this data purposes, it's plus 2 feet. But basically, we're being conservative over and over again. So we are assuming high tide. Tide cycles are different in different parts of the city, and we can't predict exactly when storms will come aboard. I don't know. I had a couple. Do you want me to just run through? Or do you want to go in order of what? I had a couple more, Jen, that were in the chat.
Yes, actually, the next few are yours, I think.
Okay.
Mary, you want to know? Do you have your list? Because it's all.
Yeah.
Go ahead, go for it.
Posted. Someone's asking how many hours of warnings there are and where people evacuate to. As much as possible. Forecasting is still a difficult science, but the trigger we look for 48 hours before what we call 0 hour is when we would start general population evacuation. For a hurricane, we consider basically when the strong winds start to be here consistently. We want all be done and everyone inside safely. So we will try and start about 48 hours before that. Evacuation centers will be open, and we need everyone to be in some safe place, by that before that 0 hour. Where are people evacuating to? The short version is just away from the hazard. There used to be specific evacuation routes and such. Now, if you see signage around the city, it really just directs people away from the coast. Specifically, our guidance, if you can, stay with friends or family out of the hazard zone. It's going to be more comfortable, etc. However, if folks need, the city will provide evacuation centers with the basics, right? A cot, water, some, MREs, and a a roof over a folks' head. I think the last one I noticed, challenges for assessing flood risk in an urban environment. I will say this is a much broader question in terms of the storm surge. You know, the folks who do the modeling are very involved and familiar with our area. So like, you know, it takes specific local knowledge. After Sandy, one of the things they noticed was the way the model handled or did not handle water flowing potentially from the Long Island Sound down the East River. So they're really looking down to that level of granularity. In terms of flood risk overall, that's something the city continues to look at, right? The stuff I was talking about is really storm surge specific. Obviously, rainwater or other types of freshwater flooding, like we saw with Ida and other events, are very impactful. So we continue to look at all that. But yes, it is extremely challenging, right? We have a complex environment that's connected by pipes and tunnels all over the place with low-lying areas that may or not be contiguous with the coast and huge density of population. So quite challenging.
Thank you. And Wale, you already answered and provided some seriously great resources from our audience, Elia Machado. Thank you. Also a board member, thank you, of GISMO. I just want to bring attention to in the chat, folks, he provided some links to guidelines and the link to his full presentation. But Wale, would you like to add anything more about the guidelines before?
Just that I think the person had also asked about like what are the biggest barriers to maps and data visualizations. I would say the biggest things that are always missing is for data visualizations, having an HTML view available. HTML table view available. So the data viewable as an HTML table, that's pretty rare, and that's what we need for accessibility. And for maps, having the data from the maps available as lists that are indexed by headings and filters. So those are the two things that are rarely ever there for maps and data visualizations, and they're the biggest barriers.
We certainly need to invite you back for the full version of this presentation.
Happy to come back. Absolutely.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions. Amy, have I missed anyone, or any panelists have we gone through that I'm absolutely have missed somehow?
I think that covers it.
That covers everything. Yeah, I think that's that. I mean, I know it's a lot to unpack, a lot of technology and so forth. This is just a sampling. I call this the amuse-bouche of the GISMO program for 2022. So please do come back and stay in touch, and to be on the newsletter, of course, please join and at least be on our newsletter, be on our posting list. And if the audience would be so kind to come on camera and allowing everybody to turn on their microphone, and just give all the presenter a round of applause. I guess it's like 3 of us on here, so thank you. Thank you, guys. Emojis, all the things.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Bye bye.
And take good care. We'll see you soon. There will be more programs coming through in actually probably I think next month, or if not this month, next month. See you all again virtually, and hopefully we'll have planned something in person. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you.
Oh, Wendy. Yay!
Yeah,
Wendy.
yeah, I was glad the Unum
Oh,
was there.
wonderful. Miss
Yeah.
Zimmerman, thank you to see your face and collaboration with GISMO.
Oh, the team is great, and so are you. Be well, everybody. I have a cold, but it was all very informative. It was great. Thanks.
Yes, more
Great.
to come, people. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good seeing you, Jack.
Yes,
Oh,
Jack.
hey, Jack! Good.
Sorry, Jack. Woohoo. Jack, we gotta take a picture of you on the award.
Oh, where's your plaque? Do you have your plaque handy, Jack? Do you want to bring it to the camera?
And we take a picture with it together.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yes. We can't see it. We'll put it next to your face like this.
Jack is back.
Jack is back.
Jack,
Yes.
Jack.
I like that smile. I like that shirt too. How fun.
Let me see.
My husband's been buying some
Jack,
like
are
Hawaiian
you
shirts
old?
like that.
Good to see you, Wendy. It's good to see you, Jim. It's good to see you, Amy. It's wonderful. And Noreen, too.
Yes. Jack, do you
Yeah.
have is that Doug on the side? No, that's just, okay, window.
Alan signed off, right?
Do you have the plaque? Can you put it next to your face like this? Hold it like this? Is it possible?
I'm vaccinated.
No, Jin wants to see the plaque next to you.
Yes, yes. The plaques I have, they're in the other room. You want me to bring them in?
If
Yeah.
it's not too much trouble.
Yes.
Oh, of course I'll bring them in. Meanwhile, you can
Yes.
take a look at the chimpanzee behind me.
I saw
Yes.
It's cute.
Really
Very
cute.
cute.
And sneakers.
Oh, too bad Alan left, huh?
Oh,
That's
call him
okay.
back. Tell him to come back in.
Okay. I'll give him a buzz.
I've got Jack on Spotlight, so it'll record it, a big picture of him.
I was happy to see that we topped out at about 60, 65 people.
It's
Yes.
amazing. Wow, that was incredible.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So what do you guys thought? Feedback, immediate
It
survey
was, I
feedback.
think it was incredible. It was amazing. I didn't think it would be quite like that. It's spectacular. And I think a lot of those people will come back for more.
I think this photographed very well, and it means a lot to me. But what means even more was that so many of you took the trouble to come and visit me in person. And it was just so good to see you in person. And Wendy and Bob particularly took me to a place in Brooklyn that I'm considering for assisted living. But the better I get, the less I feel like I need assisted living. I'm beginning to live my old life.
Yeah, it's
yeah, that's awesome. Well, think
Yes.
about it, because I'd really like to be a neighbor of yours.
Yes, we're all
now
in
that I'm
Brooklyn.
yeah, now that we're
another
all
thing
in
that's
I'm
good
having
about
trouble
it.
hearing you. I mean, I have hearing aids, but also, my hearing aids are sexist. They hear men better than women.
Okay, Jack, can you put the plaque next to your face?
Well, I said that 3 of us at least are in Brooklyn.
I have
So
some
if you
comments to
came
make
to
about
Brooklyn,
this whole discussion that we had this afternoon, and I'll send them to Jen and I'll CC Al. Okay.
I'm going to call Al, see if I can get him back. I was in California and I was taking care of my kids, trying to keep track of all this stuff also. And one of them had the crew right from the beginning to get it. I'm like, I'm not myself. Okay, I'm going to call Al and see if he can join the party.
Yeah. Amy, do you have a list of people who joined this way? I think we should only give it to folks who, it will be available for everyone. We definitely need to edit this. Oh my God, who were those people?
Well, we'll try to edit it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a fairly good editing program here. So if you want to, I can do even the sound. Oh, that's wonderful, Jack. That's right. Perfect.
Amy, how's George?
He's not 100% out of the woods. He's going to PT for his back.
Oh,
right
hi. Could you get back on? We got Jack on the screen.
The brain
Okay.
MRI today, and we got a spinal MRI on Monday.
What did I miss here? What's going on?
No, with my husband, George.
Yeah, how is he? Jeez.
He's going to PT, so they hooked him up with the electrodes and they put him on the pulley machine to like kind of stretch his back out. And today they had the MRI for the brain, and Monday is the spinal MRI, and he sees the neurologist on Friday. But his walking is definitely much improved.
Yes. Okay.
That's good.
I don't know how many of you know this, but Amy's husband, George, and I have the same last name, except mine is in Yiddish German and his is in Spanish. But Roble and Eichenbaum both mean oak tree.
Oh.
Oh, nice.
That's great.
You sound like Jack. What an
You could be
analogy.
cousins.
Yeah. So Alan's supposed to come back.
Oh, there he is. He's in
Okay,
the waiting
good.
room. I'm gonna admit him.
How did you guys like Unum? You like the Unum project?
We love it. You know, we have seen that we're delighted to see its progression, and also what is wonderful about it being discovered, uncovered.
Well, you know, I mean, it really feels good to be in this place after how many years to see something actually happening. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So,
Amy, so Jack,
you have to lift your head up a little
yeah, no, sit up, lean,
or something.
yeah, there you go. Now go back, just
Go back.
whole face.
Because he's too close to the camera.
We
There
got a
you
lot of
go.
directors here, Jack.
Okay,
That
Get in
better?
better.
that's better. Amy, you want to take a screenshot with all of us? If not, pin him.
See, this, my old computer used to have the camera built in, and there was no problem. This has a camera that sort of slides on the top of the computer.
Oh yeah.
But I think you should be able to see me well now.
Okay,
Oh,
who's
yeah,
Very
doing it?
good. Amy, you want to take a shot?
Very good. Yep.
And
I got it.
it's good to see you all. And
Yeah.
Good to see you.
I'm so happy that I'm better. I'm so happy for those of you, including all of you, who stood by me through those more than a year of my darkest days.
And we'll continue to be here. Jack.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you come to Brooklyn, we can have meetings in there. So, you know, I mean,
No,
it's on
I'm
your-
taking the subway on my own now. For the first time, I took the subway by myself. I was in Manhattan last week.
Wow.
First time by myself, and I'm going to be doing the same thing on Friday.
Go, Jack. Yeah.
All right. Great.
That's
Great,
awesome.
Wendy.
So,
Okay.
you know.
But sorry, guys,
And
I have
you-
to hop off. But so good to see you guys. I hope you have write up some comments and some suggestions. I know, Jack, you already started your list and your thoughts and thank you, Al, and your work with Doug and Amy always, and everyone's support is just, I don't know how to thank you all.
How's your mom?
Oh, she's good. She's
Good. She's here in Flushing, right?
Oh, he's mute. He's mute. No, my mom is.
Amy, can you unmute Alan?
Yeah. No, Al. No, I mean, no, my mom is in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay. But I mean, both times that you came to visit me, you had to do something with your mom. I thought she was in the snake.
Oh, no, I had to go back.
You had to
Go back to take care of my mom in Brooklyn.
Right, and this place in
No,
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn and Queens shouldn't be as different as the British drew a stupid line. They were
Oh,
not
so
as good
sorry.
as map makers as the Dutch.
No,
That's right.
problem, Jack.
Brooklyn is really Long Island, right?
That's true.
No, but they should have connected northern Brooklyn and northern Queens together in one county, and southern Brooklyn and southern Queens using the glacial moraine as the dividing line.
Oh, well, Jack, that's not the issue. Well, our issue is you should be within a 15-minute subway ride from us. It doesn't matter if it's Brooklyn or Queens, 15-minute subway ride.
Well, I'm not. Right now, I'm not going to be doing anything.
Until you
thinking
really
about
know what you
moving
want
is-
to do.
Thinking
Yeah,
about
that's fine.
moving is horrible.
You have to take it slow. It's a big deal. But if you come, we have definitely a place to meet for GISMO, right?
Yeah,
But my
we're trying to use him.
mobility is back.
It's amazing.
That's
Yay.
great. That's just
That's awesome.
terrific.
Fantastic.
We could at least get together for something, guys, right?
We
Yes.
can go visit him. Let's go visit him again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Eat
we should
out.
visit you again.
Yeah. They say
More Chinese food.
the easiest move is just to pack some suitcases with your clothes. And if you don't even want to do that, you just move into the new apartment and you can buy yourself new clothes.
That's a good
I like
idea.
that.
Right? Go light.
I've been here for 44 years. It's a great accumulation. And if I have to move, it'll be to a smaller place. And I have to think about, do I want to keep this or do I want to sell it or do I want to throw it away?
I did
Yeah,
it this
just-
year. It's hard. It's hard, but you know.
It's
Well,
easy.
yes,
Sell
I did
everything.
too.
At some
what you
point,
can't
it's just,
sell.
yeah.
It's hard to believe that when I was in my 20s, I think I moved 10 times.
What is this? You don't speak to Jack for a while, and the first thing you start to do is to nag him? Come on, give him a break.
It's great to see you people. It's so wonderful. I mean, friends here for more than 30 years. It's,
You look great.
well, thank
Yeah.
you.
You do.
Sorry,
You do.
I have to run, guys.
All right.
Okay.
You got
Hey,
I'll see you
Hey, Chuck,
guys.
you and Amy, great job. This was total success. Other than who the hell was bombing,
Oh my God.
Zoom bombing us? No
And
idea.
I have
were
no
changing-
idea.
They were changing their names as they were going, so it's like playing a game of whack-a-mole.
Oh,
So
boy.
as soon as
Yeah.
I could identify who it was that was unmuted, I just kicked them out, and then we wound up muting all the mics and not allowing people to unmute.
Mm,
And then I re-enabled the waiting room because
Mm.
initially it was off to kind of, it makes it easier, you know, and we hadn't had a problem before.
No, no.
The first
Well,
time.
yeah, somebody said, I mean, there was somebody who wrote to me during that. This happens. I found it very disturbing, actually.
Yep.
I did.
Yeah, it's not the worst I've ever seen. I have seen much
Oh.
worse where they take
Wow.
over the screen sharing.
Oh.
And it's just so disruptive that you have to shut down. So I thought that we handled it really well. They really, to me, they sounded like kids just playing a prank.
Yeah.
But I've seen really abusive ones.
Mm,
Yeah, and then after we kicked them out, we had Lee Elan, so we admitted her in, and there were 3 people afterwards in the waiting room, but I just messaged them to let them know we're at capacity, and we didn't let anybody else in because at that point we can't tell who's real or who's fake,
right.
right? Like,
Right.
even if they enter with a correct
Mhm.
name, we just never know. So we just capped it after that and just kicked out whomever.
Most of the attending people were members or,
Could have been anyone. Because we
I mean,
sent
in
the email to
general,
the whole listserv.
were they mostly members, the people who are signed up, or just?
I would
Enough.
guess not.
Yeah.
I would say at least 50% were not members from having looked through the names. It's my guess, but you
Yeah,
can
we
easily
had
do
like
an
60
analysis.
people.
66, I think, at the height.
Was it 6? Yeah, I knew. Okay, cool. That was
Yeah, that
exciting
was excellent.
to see that many.
Yeah, nice. Okay, guys. Hey,
All right.
Jack, don't be a stranger, Jack. We can go eat somewhere, all of us, yeah? Where is he?
Okay.
I'd like
Yeah.
that.
I look forward to
Looking
it.
forward.
Maybe we
Yeah.
can go to that restaurant that you wanted to go to someplace in Brooklyn. That you wanted to go to, I forgot the name of it.
I have no mind anymore. I'll think about it.
Yeah. all
We'll
right.
find a good place.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll find a good place.
all right?
Good.
Okay,
All
soon,
right.
soon.
Bye-bye.
All right. Good night.
Adios, amigos.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.